So the diary's gone, but
Yeah.
Trisha, Ricky, who's Ricky's wife, and then Ricky say that they remember the entry almost verbatim because it's burned into their brains. They've read it so many times. Uh, and I wanted to read the entry if that's okay, how they remember it, because I think it's it's jarring to hear how it's put together, the exact words. I think it lends itself a lot to just like the emotional weight of what Ricky may be feeling having read these words. And these words were dictated to you and Gary Shaw,
Yes.
correct? By
Yes.
Ricky and Trisha.
Yes.
So this is the dictation that you have written in the book. It says 11-22 63, Lebanon in parentheses, sixth floor, Saul in parentheses, records building, Mandarin in parentheses, stockade fence, shots fired from upper buildings for diversion, shots fired, looks as if target was hit, shots from fence, definite hit, man on other side of fence in the way, shots again from upper buildings, no hit, target open, fired, definite hit, gun retrieved by man to the side, took to rail car area, whirled over fence, took man down to protect myself, ran around back of fence, down embankment to car, drove to Oak Cliff, met officer, told officer not to drive to house. Something at this point was wrong. And then I have the rest of it here. Forced to take out officer at 10th and Patton, not going as planned. Backtracked to car, drove back to the area to take out other passenger. Failed to transport subject to Redbird in parentheses airport. Realized what a mistake I had made. Hope it's all over. Back to DBD, back to DPD, awaiting information. What is going through your mind when you hear that for the first time, said by Ricky and Trisha?
It scared me that somebody would write that down and leave it for somebody to find. I can't. I'm just thinking about it. If that was my father and he'd written that, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know how to react. I mean,
Yeah.
it's devastating that he wrote those. And what's interesting, Zach, is that those things, those key points in there, are things that actually happened. So he didn't, unless he was there, how did he know about those things? How did he know that there was a man in front of him, a man standing in front of the fence that was in the way? And I think he's referring to Gordon Arnold there. Um, had to,
Mhm.
um, had, let's see, what was the other part was went to Oak Cliff
Yeah.
and met officer. Now remember, unless he had a radio communication system in Roscoe's car, he drove his own car that day to work. Whether he drove that to Oak Cliff or not, but he found officer, he found Tippett, and then you remember he says told officer not to drive by the apartment. Well, is he referring to 1026 North Beckley? I think he is. And then you remember what Arlene Roberts said, the witness inside the rooming house. She said, "I heard a horn honk, and I looked up and I saw a police car with two officers in it."
Mhm.
So it's okay. Now is Tippett and Off and White together? Probably. Are they looking for Oswald? Probably. And then he says, took out the officer at Tenth and Patton. Unless there was another officer involved at Tenth and Patton, that's got to be Tippett. He's talking about Tippett. Now, did Roscoe take him out? Probably, because speculation, of course, is 99% questionable. But did Roscoe and Tippett get into a fight and go, hey, I can't go along with this. I got to get out of here. I don't want to take any chances and losing my job. And so rather than take a chance of what he's going to spill, you kill him.
Hmm.
And so then now Roscoe is looking for Oswald when he writes, went back to area looking to take out passenger. Was Oswald a passenger in the car when this occurred? Maybe, maybe not. But then he writes went back to DPD to wait instructions. Well, we have a story in there, the Tom Robinson story, where Tom Robinson's buddy, he was just a young kid, but his buddy was a captain on the police department, and they went to the police department to see what was going on. And Tom Robinson told his buddy, he says, "Hey, man, I got to use the bathroom." And he says, "Well, by then there were so many people and so many media people in the police station, they couldn't get through the hallway. So the buddy's dad took him to the locker room that used by the PD, and so he was in there in the stall doing his thing, and he heard three officers come in and were whispering in hushed tones, "You weren't supposed to kill Oswald, you idiot. Now you killed a cop. Now we're all in trouble."
Mm,
And then, of course, he's in the stall. He can't see who's talking, but as he left, he sees an officer changing out of civilian clothes into uniform, and he said that officer was Roscoe White.
mm.
So 3 things, I mean, 4 or 5 things in that diary match up with the actions that we know that took place.
Yeah, in the beginning, when it says Lebanon, Saul, and Mandarin, who are those people?
Lebanon and Saul, we don't know who they are. Mandarin was the code name that was given to Roscoe, or he came up on his own. But the 3 cables that were found in the steel canister are all addressed. The heading said "Greetings, Mandarin." And so that apparently is Roscoe's handle in whatever organization he worked for.
Mm,
It was a code name. We had aliases and now we have code names.
yeah.
So, but to answer your question, Saul and Lebanon are unknown. We have no idea.
What does shot from fence definite hit mean to you?
That sounds like a headshot to me. Definite hit. I mean, if you hit somebody in the body, you don't know if that's going to kill him or not. But do you hit him in the head? That's pretty definite. That's
Yeah,
pretty final.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what I think. That's what he said that he wrote, definite hit. Yeah,
Yeah, and then when it says gun retrieved by man on the side, took to
yeah,
rail car area,
yeah.
what do you think of when you hear that?
To me, if let's just let's just speculate for just a minute.
Yeah,
If
for sure.
Roscoe was in uniform, carrying a rifle, and he's behind the picket fence, and he fires and hits his target, it's gonna look pretty suspicious with a cop walking around with a rifle. So way we trained, we had the shooter, which was my role, the shooter and a spotter, the guy who was giving you yardage and confirmation that the shot has been, the target's been hit or down or whatever it might be. I think that's your accomplice. That's your security guy. So you give the rifle to him, and he gets it out of the area, and then you can go on about being a regular, normal looking cop. Well, that dovetails with exactly what Ed Hoffman saw. He said he saw somebody shoot from the fence. Said a man was running down the fence, parallel to the fence, with a rifle across his chest, and then suddenly stopped and tossed it to another man who was wearing worker coveralls. And that worker caught it and took it apart and put it in a bag and walked quickly out of the parking lot. Now we've got the evidence is disappearing. None of these, the shooter doesn't have a rifle, and the guy he gave it to doesn't have a rifle. So if anybody encounters them, like law enforcement, I don't have any rifles. I didn't shoot anybody,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. So th- Roscoe wrote that in the diary in 1963. We believe he did. Then he didn't know that Ed Hoffman was going to see that action because nobody knew where Ed Hoffman was at the time.
Mhm.
So that to me was a clincher as far as Roscoe's story being accurate
Yeah.
because two independent people see that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The there are people who believe that Ricky is making up the diary or making up the story or substantial parts of it for clout, financial gain, attention, whatever it is. What makes you so sure that the diary is legit, it wasn't fabricated, that it actually existed, and that Roscoe is telling the truth to or not Roscoe, that Ricky is telling the truth about his father Roscoe White to the best of his ability.
Well, first of all, we have 5 people that confirmed the diary's existence and actually read it and looked through it. So we know it existed. Um, Ricky and Trisha have no reason to lie about anything, especially what the diary confirms. Remember, I said that the 2 of them were interviewed separately. They told the same story. I don't know anybody that could recite that information that clearly and that accurately under pressure. And then second of all, I've talked to, in my while I was a law enforcement officer, I've interviewed, I don't know, hundreds of people. And then the JFK assassination, I've interviewed probably 50 or 60 people. I can tell you with 100% certainty that Ricky could not have made this story up. It's too complex. The artifacts that he produced, the bona fides that we've confirmed that these things did exist and that were complementary to that time, the 1960s. There's no doubt in my mind that Ricky is telling the truth. There's a famous quote, well, not famous, but there's a quote that we put in the book from Gary Cartwright, who wrote an article for Texas Monthly Magazine in the 1990s, saying Ricky could no more have made this up than he could explain the origin of the universe. And it's not saying that Ricky is a dumb guy. He just said this is too convoluted for somebody to come up with all these things. Hide the canister in the attic, and then my dad's dog tags in it, and negatives from grandpa and grandma, and the cables, and the photographs, and it just, why would you spend that much time putting that
Yeah.
together, not knowing if anybody's going to believe you or that anybody would even look at it more than just a glancing, well, that's nice that you have artifacts, but Zach, I can tell you he's 100% accurate. I mean, he's 100% truthful. There's no signs of deception. I mean, the very first time I met him, I was kind of intimidated because here's a guy I've read about since the 90s, and I finally got
Yeah.
to meet him. And within 15 minutes, I could tell you he was emotional. He was genuine. He was not making it up as he goes. He was telling the story as he remembered it and living it, reliving it, and living it over and over again. Uh, there's no deceptive traits that I could ever determine from Ricky. Every time I talk to him, I look at him like that and look, as if I was an investigator.
Yeah.
Is he telling me the truth? He hasn't wavered from one moment after the first time I met him until just a couple days ago I talked to him.
Yeah.